At the very least, the Sabres win a game that they definitely couldn't have lost. We'll recap it and look ahead coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get 150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the show. Apologize to everybody. Was very sick last weekend to the point where I could not talk for more than 5 seconds without coughing. I think we're almost all the way back. I should be able to get through today's show without an attack here. So back in business, and we avoided some fury and flames, but I still got a little bit of that residing from a couple of losses while away over the past week. But the most recent result for the Sabres is a 3-0 shutout win over the San Jose Sharks here on Martin Luther King Day on Monday afternoon at KeyBank Center. We'll recap it. We'll look ahead at what's to come. We'll take a sail across the Atlantic. There is another goal by Sam Reinhart, and the Panthers are hot. There are other things happening right above the Sabres in the standings that are worth looking at as well, because they're not dead. They're not out of it. They still are one run away from being right in the thick of things, but they continue to look like a team incapable of putting said run together. So we'll get to that, and I'll have my sneaky stars of the game coming up in the second segment of today's show. One at least sneaky, the other maybe a little bit more obvious. That's coming up. Join subtext.com/lockedonsabres if you want to become a sortie and jump in on our group chat that we have throughout the games. One comment that I picked out from the end of this game against the San Jose Sharks after a phenomenal game by Casey Mittelstadt. One listener asked, I wonder if we don't start climbing in the standings, should we try to deal Mittelstadt at the deadline? And I did a show on this a couple of weeks ago, and we'll definitely revisit this topic at some point. But Mittelstadt seems like an obvious, you just keep it going and you sign him. He leads the team in points with 38 in 44 games. He is on a 71-point pace. But I don't think it's as simple as you just pay him and sign him. Maybe it's kind of up to the player. But Mittelstadt has some leverage here. He can tell the Sabres after the year that I'm only going to sign a 1-year deal with you, and you're going to walk me to unrestricted free agency. So he has that right. Other players have taken that approach in the past. To me, it's up to the Sabres. Do they feel, heading into the trade deadline, if they're not in it, that they feel confident that he's going to sign? Because if the answer is no, then yeah, the time is to sell high, max out on his value, because there's definitely no time that Casey Mittelstadt will ever be worth more than he is right now. But the scary thing about that is Mittelstadt's been their most trustworthy forward all year, let alone their most trustworthy center. As Tage Thompson's regressed and as Dylan Cousins has super regressed, Mittelstadt has risen and stepped up. And how confident would the Sabres be just going with Cousins and Thompson as the 1-2, not having Mittelstadt there to ride in? So that is a topic that we'll definitely cover more so coming up here on the show as we head to the trade deadline. But looking at the last couple of results quickly before we get to Sabres and Sharks. Okay, they lost to Seattle, they beat Ottawa, they lost to Vancouver. So here we are on this homestand that I said going in, 12 possible points. You got to get 9. You got to get at least 9. And 8, okay, 8 is, we're not, firing anybody over 8. So that is still in play. They still can get to 8 points. They would have to win, though, their remaining 2 games, which would be a 3-game win streak, something they have not done all year. And a lot of fans don't have a lot of faith, I guess, that this team could put that together right now. Real quick on the last couple of games. The win against Ottawa, great win. 5-3. You scored a bunch of goals. Tage Thompson had a Tage game for the first time, long time. 2 goals on the night, was the game's number 1 star. I just mentioned, can you trust Tage and Cousins? Those 3 goals and 1 assist between the 2 of them in the Ottawa game. They outshot Ottawa in the game. Yeah, they needed a little bit of breaks from a bad goaltender, but they managed to get there against a team that's below them in the standings. You got to win a game like that. Then Vancouver. Very frustrating game. The Sabres played well. Again, outshot Vancouver. They had a boatload of chances. This was a fun game, by the way. Even though it was 1-0, tons of chippiness. Dahlin gets elbowed in the face, and it didn't get a 5-minute major by JT Miller, which to me was unbelievable. Eric Johnson did a good job stepping up for him. All the Sabres, really. Power. Owen Power. You know what? Credit to Owen Power for jumping in and stepping up, standing up for Rasmus Dahlin. Here's why. Yes, he's 6'6", but we know he's not filled out yet. We know he's still a teenager. And we know that's not his thing. He's not a physical player at all. But he stepped up. Now, the next step is put on some weight, hit the weight room so that eventually you can actually win a battle like that as a guy that's 3 inches taller than the guy you're fighting there. But overall, what happened in the Vancouver game? They got goalied. Luukkonen was great, 22 of 23 saves. They got goalied. Thatcher Demko. This is why I was obsessed with that. I probably annoyed you last season for how many times I talked about the Sabres acquiring Thatcher Demko. And that was only on rumors that Demko was available. But let me tell you something. There will be hell to pay if I find out that Thatcher Demko was ever available in the Sabres past. I will bring pitchforks to that arena because I loved that idea. And that guy is such a good goaltender. He's a Vezina candidate back again this year. 26 safe shutout against the Sabres. Demko just goalied the Sabres. So that's how they lost that game. Now San Jose. Another bad team and a team that the Sabres should beat 10 times out of 10. They did the job. How did they do the job? I'll get you to my sneaky stars of the game. We'll go through some of the stats, and then we'll take a sail across the Atlantic coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. And it's not just football, of course. You have hockey, you have basketball going right now, you have soccer going over in England and Europe. The app is super easy to use. Live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and plenty more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Locked On's launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Check out Locked On Sports today for your 24/7 covering the top stories of the day with every league, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Sabres 3, Sharks nothing. What the Sabres did in this game was they outplayed a bad team, which, they should do. They outshot San Jose 35-28 in this game. If you look at the shot attempts at 5-on-5 in this game, 56 for Buffalo, 52 for San Jose. So not too far off. Scoring chances, 25 for Buffalo, 20 for San Jose. To me, what this game looked like was a game that got moved up in terms of the time, 12 o'clock, and the Sharks maybe were running on a little bit of adrenaline because they got in late last night and a quick turnaround. I don't know, kind of feels like, all right, hot start. They just woke up maybe, but they're all on edge because they don't know when they're going to get there. The Sabres, meanwhile, maybe were preparing for a 1 o'clock game or a later game that gets moved to 12 o'clock. Sabres didn't have their feet to start the game. However it happened, whatever narrative you want to attach to it, the Sabres didn't have their legs in the first 20 minutes of the game. And the Sharks did. The Sharks actually, in terms of shot attempts, 20 in the first period, 14 for Buffalo in period one. But after that, Sabres got their legs under them, and they were the better team from period two on. And I thought it showed. A lot from all different lines. I thought really the only line that didn't play well in my eyes was the Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, and JJ Peterka line. I thought they were a little bit rough at 5-on-5 on the night, but overall, I thought the Krebs line was great. I thought the Mittelstadt line was really good. And I thought the Thompson line was creating chances as well. Don Granato, new line combinations. If you look at, who were the most common line mates in this game? You had Casey Mittelstadt with Jordan Greenway and Eric Robinson. Okay. You had, that's the wrong one. Mittelstadt with Greenway and Okposo. Thank you. That's the correct line. You had Tage Thompson with Alex Tuck, and Zach Benson actually received the most minutes. And there were some mix-ups. At one point, you did have Mittelstadt with Robinson and Greenway. You had Okposo with Krebs and Girgensons. You had Robinson with Krebs and Girgensons. What Granato said about all that juggling was he was exploring different combinations to get what he called a worker on each line. Instead of going 2 all-skill lines, 2 work lines, he wanted one worker on each line. And I guess Benson would qualify as the worker for the top line. You had, I guess Greenway would qualify. No, Okposo maybe would qualify that as for the Mittelstadt line. Whatever had happened, he wanted one energy guy, one digger, worker on each line. And maybe that's a trend that we see from Don Granato coming up. So, there was a lot of jumbling going on. In fact, if you look at it, the Sabres used 11 different line combinations in this game. 11 different line combinations. Really, it was more like 10. Mittelstadt, Benson, Greenway only played 10 seconds together on one shift. But 10 real line combination changes is a lot from Don Granato. My sneaky stars of this game, let's look at it. So one of them, not sneaky at all. Very obvious who the number one star of this game was, the most important player, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Absolutely deserved his shutout on the night. He made a bunch of great saves, tracking pucks. I thought tracking pucks, he was unbelievable. The Sharks with William Eklund on a power play in the second period. Eklund skates to the middle. The puck is in the air, and he bats it out of the air and got a lot on it, like a baseball swing. And Luukkonen moving side to side tracks this puck in the air and then tracks the shot and makes the save, pounces on the rebound with no opportunity lost. And right then and there, you knew that this guy was locked in for the night. He made a great save pretty soon after where he missed on a poke check, toe dragged by the Shark forward to the backhand, and Luukkonen got to the side. He was moving really well. I thought tracking, though, was his number one trait in this game. Absolutely deserved the 28 save shutout. And I had a lot of comments from a bunch of listeners, a bunch of sorties on our text line that said Luukkonen's got to play again on Wednesday night. And I'm here for that. I'm here for that. That would be another start for Luukkonen. In fact, that would make 4 straight starts and 5 of the last 6 if they go back to him against Wednesday. But hey, you play the hot hand, and this guy's allowed 1 goal in his last 60 minutes of action. So I would go back to Luukkonen on Wednesday too. He was definitely the number one star. Easy number 2. Casey Mittelstadt, 3-point night, extends his lead for the team. He's the team leader in points, 38 now on the year in 44 games, a goal and 2 assists for Mittelstadt. The goal was a little lucky because the puck kind of dribbled through Kaapo Kähkönen, the goaltender, but it was a nice play by Mittelstadt to get to his spot in the first place. It's a drop pass from Okposo, and he charges the net. Mittelstadt takes up that space, and he goes toe drag to the middle of the feet of the defenseman, and that's how he gets the shot through. It had pace. It was just a little bit low. So a good job by Mittelstadt for sure, and he did have to get a little bit of luck. And then the 2 assists, one, of course, is an empty netter, but the other one was a nice pass. Dahlin, to me, is going to get the 3rd sneaky star of the game, the sneakiest of them, because it wasn't like a Dahlin game. He didn't have these highlight reel plays, but he did have an assist on the night, and highest among all Sabre defensemen is 79.5% expected goals for percentage. When Rasmus Dahlin was on the ice, the Sabres shot attempts, 23 for them, 12 for the Sharks. So almost doubled them up. Scoring chances while Dahlin was on the ice, 12 for Buffalo, 3 for San Jose. When he was out there, San Jose just didn't have the puck. And he was controlling the play throughout, and I thought played really well. A little bit of a bounce back game for him. He made that comment the other night about being hesitant to jump into rushes. He wasn't doing a lot of that, and I hope that this will instill some confidence in him to get back into jumping in the rushes. Because if Dahlin's not doing that, if he's not playing aggressive, if he's not playing offensive, you're taking away a huge part of his value. So I'm going UPL, Mittelstadt, and Dahlin for my sneaky stars of the game as the Sabres beat the San Jose Sharks by a 3-0 score. All right. Timeout here. When we come back, we will take a little bit of a look. We'll take a sail across the Atlantic Division, which definitely is getting a little bit more difficult to see the Sabres carving out a spot. And one former Sabre that is just on fire. Plus, outside the Atlantic, another former Sabre that, we'll just give you a quick injury update. It might not be too good for one important former Sabre on his team. That's all coming up here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. We are presented by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry about where you're buying tickets to your next big event. It could be hockey, football, Bandits lacrosse, music, comedy, theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts, which is crazy. It's the best place to find last-minute tickets. Zone deals. So zone deals. You pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for big time savings. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Final segment here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Okay, sail across the Atlantic Division. Let's look at what's happening around the Sabres. That's another win. So, all right, they're playing decently well. 6 wins in their last 10. They're keeping pace. But that's not going to do it. They got to make up ground. They can't just keep pace or else they'll never even get close to making the playoffs, obviously. So what we are looking at right now is 7 points between the Sabres and the Lightning, who currently occupy that final wild card position. Also 7 points between the Sabres and the Red Wings, who have the first wild card position. So 2 Atlantic teams in the 2 wild card spots. Both have won a couple recently. Detroit winning in overtime last night. Tampa now is on a 3-game winning streak. They're starting to find their form after some big struggles middle of the year. So you got the top 3. And guess what? As much as Toronto is struggling, Toronto's lost 6 of their last 10. They've lost back-to-back games. They are not as good as they normally are, this Toronto team. Like, they've got warts. I still think they have too much talent to fall out. So Boston is number 1. The Panthers finally lost today. They had a 9-game winning streak going. They are cruising. Boston, Florida, Toronto. Less confident with Toronto, but still, I think those teams are locked in. So what you then have are a bunch of teams, including some Metro teams, fighting for 2 wildcard spots. How do the Sabres stack up against the Red Wings, and how do they stack up against the Lightning? I still think the Red Wings are a little bit fraudulent and could fall down at any point in time. So that spot I do think is available. Tampa, I also think is available, but I'm less sure about that because the way they've looked recently, they look like their old selves. I don't know that they can make that last, though. That's where my doubt comes in because of their age, because of their lack of depth that they have compared to past seasons. I think Tampa's spot could be available as well. We all know, though, that's not the whole picture. There are right now 5 teams between the Sabres and those 2 teams in spots, and they got to jump over them. They are currently 4 points behind Washington, 5 points behind New Jersey, 6 points behind the Islanders and the Penguins. They got to leapfrog over all 4 of those Metro teams and then get one of their Atlantic rivals. Then they find their way into a playoff spot. So they're going to need a win streak, and they're going to need a bunch of these teams to fall behind. But the good news is, why have their Sabres only 7 points out, despite the fact they don't have a single win streak on the year, despite the fact that they're on pace for like 80 points? 7 points. I mean, 7 points is a lot, but why isn't it like 15? Because there have been a lot of years where it has been at this point in the year. The conference is down. It was down last year, and it's down again this year. And Detroit, Tampa, Pittsburgh, the Islanders, the Devils falling down out of nowhere. All of these teams have allowed the Sabres to be 1 win streak away from being back in it. And at some point, though, that luck's going to run out. Somebody out of this 6-team group, somebody's going to go on a run. I don't know who it is. I would guess it's going to be New Jersey, if you ask me. But somebody's going to go on a run. And really, if 2 teams go on a run, then you're dead. You got to hope that 2 teams don't. So time's running out. But the way it looks right now, the Lightning and the Red Wings, they won a couple of games recently. They're keeping the Sabres at bay at this point in time. The good news is the Islanders, the Capitals, they're falling down, and the 4-point gap on Washington and the 6-point gap that the Sabres have on the Islanders, those were a lot bigger in recent weeks. So that is starting to come down a little bit. Now, one individual player to update you on in the Atlantic Division. Former Sabres Sam Reinhart. 7-game goal streak. Scores again on Monday. He has 32 goals on the year. 32. He is 1 behind Austin Matthews for the league lead. He is squarely in the Rocket Richard race. And Sam Reinhart winning the Rocket Richard would be wild. He was never really known as a goal scorer, right? Like even in his best days with the Sabres and even in Florida. You know, he's a good goal scorer, but he's a smart player, and that makes him an elite playmaker at times. When he's at its best, I think you think of him as a playmaker. Maybe I'm wrong in that. He's still a well-rounded offensive player. Net front, shot, pass, smarts. But this year, it's just, listen, it's unsustainable. We know he might get 50 goals this year. In fact, he probably is going to get 50 goals this year. And by the way, what's funny, Sabres play the Panthers in the second to last game of the year. That'd be too funny if Sam Reinhart scores his 50th goal against his former team. But anyways, we know this isn't him. He's at a 27% shot percentage. His career average is 15. So we know it's going to come down at some point. We know this is unsustainable. But it is absolutely a career season. He's 2 off his career high. He's already 6 goals above his high with the Buffalo Sabres. Guys have seasons like this. Jonathan Cheechoo for the Sharks scored 50 goals once. Chris Kreider a couple years ago, someone who's been more of like a high 20-goal guy, scored 50 goals for the Sabres. I hope Tage Thompson isn't a guy like that, but Thompson right now looks like that as well. 47 last year. Reinhart's having that year, and it's in his contract year, so he's going to get paid big time. So that's one former Sabre to update you on. Another, on a completely opposite note, Jack Eichel is injured in Vegas. Now I know we don't do the hate Jack Eichel reports anymore. We had a lot of fun for a year and a half there of looking at the despair of the Golden Knights when they missed the playoffs and Eichel wasn't playing well. He won the cup. He wins forever. You can't make fun of him anymore. And this isn't making fun of him. Eichel is injured. We don't know if it's a neck injury, but here's what Elliot Friedman said on 32 Thoughts that makes me think it could be neck. Quote, "People are nervous. I guess that's the best way to put it. I don't like to overstate anything. I don't know, but I think nervous is the right word until you know for sure that this isn't a bad thing. People are nervous." That was Elliot Friedman on Jack Eichel's injury. He was placed on IR yesterday without anybody knowing what the injury was. In fact, I still think to this moment, nobody knows. So worth keeping an eye on it because he had that neck surgery that had never been done before on an NHL player. Other NHL players have had that surgery since, so it's not like it's new and innovative anymore. Multiple players have had it, but it is worth, talking about when it comes to, him being injured. If it's the neck, could that derail his career? We'll see. I wouldn't jump, obviously, as Friedman says, I'm not jumping to that conclusion yet, but it's something to keep an eye on if you're still interested in these former Sabres. All right, that's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Next up for the Sabres, Wednesday night, 7:30 TNT game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Another game that is a must-win. Connor Bedard. Actually, before I say this, is he back from injury? I don't actually know. He is no, never mind. He's been out 6 to 8 week injury. So never mind. Glad I checked. I was about to say Bedard's first trip to Buffalo. Broken jaw. He will absolutely not play against the Sabres on Wednesday night. But anyways, we'll preview the game. We'll look at Chicago's lineup, a team the Sabres should beat. And here's to hoping they can get this win streak rolling. Thanks everybody for listening here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, making us your first listen every day. Now go make your next listen Locked On Sports Today, here for your 24/7, covering the top stories of every league. NFL playoffs going on right now. Don't miss it. Is Mike McCarthy going to get fired in Dallas? Among many things they're going to get to. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.